testimony was dispositive to the court. And so what we have in this case, we have proof that there was a shooting on the 12th at a particular location in town. We have proof that 2 days later, officers or crime scene techs, who actually aren't officers, but crime scene techs went to the same location 2 days later and observed a Ridgeline vehicle that had an obvious bullet defect with a termination of that bullet inside a door. That owner of that vehicle was instructed to call the police if that projectile was recovered. 3 weeks later, another technician from the Knoxville Police Department went back to the same house and retrieved a projectile. We do not have the person who found the projectile to say, hey, I found this in the door of this Ridgeline, nor do we have the owner of the Ridgeline itself to say, my car was here on the day of the 12th, the day of the shooting, and this bullet hole wasn't there before then, and so it had to happen during this occurrence. All that would have been okay, and the projectile still be admissible if Sergeant Dalton could have connected the projectile to these weapons that were obviously used in the shooting based upon his findings of the casings. However, he was unable to do so. He can only say that that projectile is in the class of projectiles that would have been fired out of one of these weapons, but it's a broad class. There's other weapons that could have been used, and there wasn't enough specific identifiers to say this projectile was fired from the same weapon that we know was fired on the 12th. So if the state had either one of those, it would be okay. If they had Sergeant Dalton's ability to say, I know this projectile was fired from that weapon, one of the weapons, I'd let it in. Or if they had the technician to say, I recovered this projectile from the Ridgeline, Honda Ridgeline that was there, then that would have been okay too. But without those two things, there is a real question on whether or not that round that was recovered from Mr. Holloway's vehicle was actually associated to this crime. And so you've got a number of issues legally you're dealing with. You have to wrestle with relevance, you have to wrestle with chain of custody, and you also have to wrestle with authenticity. And authenticity is the item what the proponent purports it to be. And so without any further proof, I don't think the state is able to overcome those legal issues. And so when I thought about it, what sort of made up my mind is if you take the evidence at face value, what the state says it is, then there is really no proof that that bullet was really fired during this date. I mean, certainly a lot of circumstantial evidence and some proof that it's likely to be, but even if it is, even if it was, it doesn't really add anything to the state's case because they've got the shell casings is what connects it to the guns. That projectile does not connect the guns to the shooting because it just fits in the class. And likewise, it doesn't really help the defense either. It doesn't help them in their arguments either. And so it really is the definition of irrelevance because there's no matter in controversy that this bullet is going to answer the question. So I don't think that the bullet or the projectile should come into evidence. We have marked it as ID. I'm going to leave it there. I think that the proof that we have received has been relevant proof to show that the police did respond to that neighborhood 2 days later and continued to investigate. It shows that they were doing a thorough investigation. But I think Sergeant Dalton's findings on that projectile aren't really relevant because we can't really connect it strongly enough to the case to satisfy me as the gatekeeper of the evidence that it is authentic. As I said in my email last night, if there are questions of Sergeant Dalton about you didn't find any other evidence or something like that, well, the defense could easily open the door to him and say, well, no, I tested this one too, and it didn't really, all it said is class characteristics. Now, I don't think that, if it came in, I don't think it really hurts the defense that much anyway. All the judges I've been speaking to are sort of like, I don't think it can go wrong because it's not gonna make a difference one way or the other. But that's gonna be the court's ruling. I'm not going to redact any of the testimony that we received. I think everything that's come in so far is proper, but I don't think we'll actually admit the projectile, nor should we have Sergeant Dalton talk about it unless his work is questioned, and then we'll revisit it at that time. So are there any questions from the state on either of those two rulings?
Your Honor, in light of your ruling that we received last night, I went about to redact references to that particular projectile in Sergeant Dalton's testing of that from his final report. And I'm happy to show that redaction to Your Honor, to counsel, to make sure that everybody is okay with that.
If you could just let them see it, I don't think, if they're happy with it, I'm okay. And is there any questions about that from Mr. Davis's team?
No, Your Honor, not about that ruling, thank you.
Mr. Robinette? All right. I'll let y'all look at it.
Can we do white out? I can just step right in through the,
This is the copy. So you can read the copy.
yeah, I can still read it. But I have a. White out. No, that's okay.
I think Ms. Counts is going to white out or black out.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so we'll let y'all look at that. We also need to address the videos too, but I'll let you
Yes, Your
finish
Honor.
that.
And just for clarification, I know just because we now have a second ruling as to Mr. Dalton, the court's pretrial ruling as to the micro images is that they are not coming in with the exception of those that were previously provided. But I realized there was a contingent ruling on that as well.
As far as,
Like if we
You can
challenge
open the
the
door for it.
comparison, then it's,
yeah, like if you start questioning his conclusions and say, how did you arrive at that? Well, he's gonna have to show how he arrived at it.
sure.
Miss Judy, we're gonna need some copies.
I apologize, Your Honor, I just can still read through the Sharpie,
It's okay. Miss Judy can do that for you if you'd like.
whatever the court prefers.
Yeah, let's let her do it. She's actually really good at it. So we
Here's the-
blacked out with a magic marker, just make it white. So less noticeable, that's what we're All right.